Same-sex marriage advocates have been out in force today, urging young Australians to get enrolled before tonight's midnight cut-off so they can vote in the postal survey. They haven't had as much success as they'd like. The Electoral Commission has so far registered only 55,000 of the estimated 380,000 young Australians thought to be unenrolled. Even so, one of the interesting things in the outcome of the same-sex vote will be the role of young voters, because they may also be a critical factor in the federal election. Here's political correspondent Andrew Probyn.
These university students are of the generation that could decide the next election. For the time being, they're being urged to focus on the looming postal survey on same-sex marriage.
We know that over 80% of young Australians do actually support marriage equality, but they're the least likely to get out and vote for it. So that's why we're here.
The same-sex marriage debate has become a proxy battle for the younger vote.
There's a very clear case, Conservative case for same-sex marriage.
Andrew Bragg, a former acting federal director of the Liberal Party, is leading the Coalition's Yes campaign. And he doesn't want gay marriage to be seen as inconsistent with conservatism.
If you believe in small government, then you wouldn't have a law tell you who you can and can't marry.
But there's something else at stake behind the fight over rainbow rights.
All the research is showing that young people will be the first generation to be worse off than their parents.
We are doing stupid things that hurt young Australians, and that is a silly thing to do, and we could do better, but we are unlikely to do better until younger Australians are more engaged in every debate, not just marriage equality, but a range of things.
Young people have faced, if you like, a perfect storm of changes in the asset markets, slow wage growth and particularly increases in underemployment for young people have conspired to limit their income growth as well.
This emerging generational divide has left a swathe of young voters wanting to be heard, but not always engaging.
My research shows that young people care deeply about political issues, but it also shows that they don't feel that they're being listened to by politicians.
We've gone through a phase in which older Australians are increasingly eating the future, and younger Australians haven't noticed.
So are young Australians justifiably grumpy?
They're not grumpy enough. You don't necessarily need to run around with placards, but you need to make your voice heard. You need to be part of the debates on policies. And it is the policies, it's not the politics, it's not the he said, she said.
Young voters have had their dalliances with both sides of politics. If they'd had their way, Mark Latham would have been elected Prime Minister in 2004. They swung wildly behind the Kevin 07 campaign, helping end John Howard's long reign. Young voters became disenchanted under Julia Gillard, as Tony Abbott's negativity cut through. But Mr Abbott proved even more unpopular as PM. The youth were enamoured with Malcolm Turnbull at first, but the honeymoon soured by last year's election. Now 18 to 34-year-olds significantly favour Labor over the Coalition.
Over time, governments respond to what voters want, and so if there's a big group of voters, a particular demographic like the baby boomers, then they tend to influence government policy on the way through their own life stages.
If you mess around with the future of people for long enough, and then they wake up in a rush, that is an absolute recipe for trouble, for social unrest.
Both political leaders are encouraging people to register on the electoral roll before midnight tonight.
And I want to encourage everyone, if they're not enrolled and can be enrolled, to do so. And if you think your enrolment details, your address might be out of date, it's very easy to get online and bring it up to date.
The fact is, if we're to have a postal survey, please participate so that you can vote yes for marriage equality and the nation can simply move on.
The next election won't be decided by same-sex marriage, but issues that resonate with younger voters will be very influential. And the Coalition won't want to be on the wrong side of an electoral shift, whether that's on gay marriage or questions of generational equity. Low wage growth, high university fees and the renter versus homeowner equation all hit younger voters harder, and the resentments are building. That's the potential risk of the postal survey to the coalition. Young Australians who polls say favour Labor becoming fully fledged voters.
We've seen in Australia the emergence of new kinds of organisations like GetUp, but also the progressive political parties have had a long-term history of using social media and using data targeting to access young people, but also to present information to them in a way that appeals to them.
It's very important that the argument is made using the modern technology, using communications platforms where people are. If 70% of people are using Facebook at least once a day, then you've got to be making those messages on Facebook. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself.
What is clear is that data is the ammunition of modern political warfare.
It's hundreds of campaigns. It's hundreds of micro campaigns within your framework that will appeal to different people in different ways. We now know more about people than we ever have, and we have to utilise that in any way we can.
Labor believes it's got the policy settings to answer the generational gripes about housing, education and stagnant wages. The Liberal Party machine believes Labor's prescription is simplistic, but the government knows it's been outmanoeuvred by a shrewd and better organised political opponent. And so the same-sex marriage postal survey becomes a dry run for the bigger contest next year. Who can best mobilise the near 400,000 18 to 25-year-olds who've never voted?
Whether it's housing, education, wages, jobs, we need to make sure that we are getting the opportunities that generations before us had that we feel are being ripped away from us.
There's a simple equation here. Unless and until younger Australians get more engaged, they will remain stunningly on the wrong side of Australia's decisions.